really pleased, actually, to bring together these two very special people in my mind. And Nesta and FutureFest was very interested to have this debate between Jude Kelly, who is the founder and director of Women of the World Network, just recently left the South Bank, but today I've got you here for Women of the World Network, yeah? And Russ Shaw, the founder and director of Tech London Advocates and Global Tech Advocates.
Yes, great to be here.
Great, thank you very much for joining us. And I really wanted to bring you together because I've got a fascination with networks and networking, having been involved in it for many, many years, yeah? And I'm just really interested in the future of these networks which are actually developing, becoming global, which are actually helping people to move forward and fulfill their potentials. Yep. So that was the first question I wanted to put to you two, and in conversation with each other as well, to compare your scenarios in a way. Could you tell us some of the advantages you see that people gain from these network scenarios and the resulting movements for action? What are we doing through networking that can influence tomorrow's world?
Sure. You go ahead.
Okay. Well, the first thing to say is that when people say this is an opportunity for networking, I normally feel a sense of dread. You know, because for me, I spent most of my theatre work in the theatre, in the arts and cultural organisations, etc., but also crossing over all the time into the field of activism, cultural activism. And one of the things that I think networking can be is either a tighter and tighter noose around a smallish number of people of like mind, like background, and therefore kind of like myopia. Or networks can be generous and free-thinking and fully inclusive, but that doesn't come naturally. That has to be constructed, because we are taught to be tribal, whether we are tribal or not, we're taught to be tribal, and I think to unlock that tribalism is something which needs philosophy. It needs a set of values and commitments to the idea that the network will serve a greater purpose than simply self-serving the people who join it. So that the first thing is, I think of WOW, Women of the World Festival, as a movement, and I hope that's not grandiose, but when I think of it as a movement rather than network, I think it's easier to be able to speak of what are its values. What is it, if it's a movement, what's it trying to move? And with whom is it moving? And to whom is it moving? And who is it moving out? So I suppose that's a long answer. I think networks are really, really critical. But most people don't know how to leverage them, yes, and aren't asked, you know, in. So it's a strength and it's a weakness.
I would agree with that, and I would say having a networking skill, you know, we're talking about occupational futures and the future of work, is probably one of the most critical skills that anyone can have. And when I meet people, when I talk to people, and you know there is some skepticism or hesitancy, I say, look, just give it a try. Get out there, meet people, talk to them about what you do, ask lots of questions. You will learn so much. And I think the point that you make, Jude, about open and inclusive, those are the networks that I think are going to have the longest lasting impact. There are lots of clubs, there's lots of membership organizations and trade organizations. I'm not a believer in that. So when I set up Tech London Advocates 5 years ago, and now we've got Global 10 Advocates, I was just in Milan this week to launch Tech Italy Advocates. The whole premise is about people coming together in a voluntary capacity, but the groups are open, entirely inclusive. These are free to join networks. So there's really not much to lose. There's not much risk, but you can learn so much by getting involved with a network.
That's great. And I do need to point out these are two quite big networks, which is what's fascinating. I think you're over 5,000 now.
Yeah, well, the London group's over 6,000,
yes,
and the global group in total is over 10,000. Yeah.
And Jude, going into...
So AOL measured WOW, Women of the World Festival, 2 years ago, and they said we had 2 million.
Right.
So it's deemed to be the biggest convener of girls and women and boys and men in the world of its kind in terms of civic society.
Yes.
And interestingly, both are going into many countries now, actually moving into global tech advocates, and Jude festivals happening in 32 places around the world. It's amazing.
30 countries, 72 sort of on the map already,
Great. So one of the other things I wanted to, having you both together here, is that in your work, Russ, which I know you through well, through the Tech City scene and being part of TLA, The focus, of course, in the tech scene and from our government today, and many governments, is on STEM skills.
Yes.
Now, just to clarify that, many of you know, it's STEM in capitals, science, technology, engineering, and maths, yeah? The big focus where all our kids and students are being pushed towards. Yeah, actually, I'm arts background too, like Jude, and actually what I feel we're missing there and is the A, the STEAM, and this is an acronym, is STEAM, adds in art and design into the mix, yeah. So what do you feel about that need to actually start to include a much deeper creative and design side into the tech world? Maybe go to you first.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely vital. And I love the fact that you've got it and people talk about STEAM, because to me, arts, design, creativity is such a critical part of the tech community, and we tend to forget about it when we talk about STEM, but STEM is obviously very important, and I would encourage you to listen to Anne-Marie at 12:30, who leads STEMette. She does a brilliant job with that. But when I talk about tech jobs for the future, yes, we talk about coders, programmers, data analysts, but when I talk to young people, I also say, look, if you're interested in art, if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in design, do it. Why? Because those future jobs in digital and in tech require people who have a great visual mindset, who have great design capabilities, user interface, user experience. We have a shortage of those jobs today, and that's only going to grow in the future. We're going to need people who write great digital content. So if you're a great writer, if you want to study English, do it. There is a role for you in the future when we look about digital and technology jobs. So to me, the broader this tent can be, the better. My one request to any person, young or old, and there are a lot of older people reskilling and retraining for the future, is around having some basic digital skills. It's going to be absolutely vital for virtually every job that's going to be out there in the future.
And just to follow that through with you, Jude, because in working a lot, as I do with women in tech and women's stuff too, we've been discussing a lot the fact that A of art and design, inserted into STEM to make STEAM, is actually really important in relationship to the inclusion of women and girls in the technology world too. What do you feel about that, putting that statement forward? Because what we find in our group work is that if we get the creativity in there, they'll use the tech for solutions, but we're not putting the tech first.
Well, I'm not sure that tech should ever be first. We're sitting on a technical thing, which is a platform, as in somebody had to decide to build something that would raise human beings in order that other ones could see them. I mean, tech usually means the things are at the forefront of design technology, but the things we're used to, like electric lights, we don't call them tech anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's a sort of an illusory term for me, this idea of tech as something all by itself. I think that, first of all, it's not very useful for humanity to do too many silos. And the tech industry seems to morph into, again, another tribe, a kind of an idea of image. An idea of sort of formal knowledge, which actually I don't recognise as really being what's going on. And I think one of the reasons why girls and women have not been attracted to it is, we know all the issues about role models, we know all the issues about, the way girls are thought to think and see themselves, and what's feminine and what's not feminine, and what's masculine and what's not. So all these sort of binary ideas that send people down different paths. I think that we could dissolve them much more. I think STEAM is one way, but obviously that is about acknowledging how art, design and creativity are a critical thing about innovation. And that, to me, should be obvious. I would say another path of problem is, supposing we have STEAM, where are we going to put caring? So huge areas of humanity are involved in caring professions. They use technology and they use art, but basically the biggest number of people are involved in caring, either domestically or in aging situations or in hospitals, or they're in service industries. Where are they floating in this idea of joining networks? So if the tech network becomes a sort of STEAM network, good, but the lowest paid and the highest volume of people are actually working as a thing called C.
Yes.
Where are we putting them? And
where do we put
have
the
this
C?
conversation?
Yeah.
And I think on that point, when we talk a lot about, and I'm sure over the next couple of days we'll hear about AI, machine learning, data analytics, et cetera. And I just recently heard the term metal collar workers. And I thought, what? And
Whoa.
this is
Metal collar.
metal collar. So there's blue collar, there's white collar, metal collar.
Whoa.
I know, which has a chilling effect to it. And I think we're going to see in the next 20 years, a lot of jobs are going to disappear. A lot of low-skilled jobs are going to go away. However, to your point, there are going to be a critical emergence of human jobs, whether they're carers or people who are volunteering to help others, whatever it might be. We have to think about and embrace what it's going to mean to be a human 20 years from now, when technology, robots, whatever, are going to take away many jobs. So how do we stay ahead of the curve? How do we engage and respect and say human interaction and human interface is absolutely vital for the future? We are going to see disruption. We're going to see, in my opinion, we're going to see a massive amount of income inequality because of this. So we're going to have to think about how we put even greater value on those human roles, and also how we as a society figure out how are we going to pay those people, because we're going to need to pay those people, whether you look at things like universal basic income or some type of redistribution of wealth from the big tech companies that are going to be benefiting massively from this. That's the open tent we need, and why we need to bring humans who may not be a data analyst or a coder or a user experience evaluator into this broader ecosystem.
Can I pick up that
Yeah.
more? So, I completely agree. The fetishism that goes around the idea of the tech culture, which is sort of gadgety and new, it gets in the way.
It does.
Really, because we know that millions and millions of people aren't participating in that.
Yep.
Of course, we all take advantage from it. I want innovation all the time from humans. I'm going to be very sorry to be dead one day and not see what we'll do next. But I think this idea of the human voice is so critical, because if you think about tech as also being related to power, because it's related to money, and take it back to this notion of networks, some of the people that we need to hear from, because they have the maximum amount of knowledge, are people who have no relationship at all to power or tech. So if you think about who knows most about microfinance, it will be women, probably, but not only women, in the poorest places,
Yes.
who could best advise on microfinance. And they are only having very limited relationship to tech, but they're experts. If you think about the voice of First Nations and Indigenous people in terms of how we are rethinking planetary conservation, because they have the least power, because they are most marginalised, and because they are not therefore involved in this tech, we are delaying knowledge because of this fetishism of the tech and the tech community.
And we have to bring those voices and those people in now. When I talk about the future, the next 20 years, about AI and machine learning, the biases that are going to be in the data and the information that drives this is going to be driven by white men who are in that space today. So getting women, younger women, blacks, minority ethnics into this space now. As Ghislaine knows, I get very frustrated that the London tech ecosystem, 17% is women, 83% men, mostly white men. We have set out a task that says, look, by 2023, in 5 years, we want to get that to 33%. People say, well, why not 50%? I said, well, 50% is great, but let's be realistic. We want to double that in the next 5 years. So the work that you're doing, the work that people like Anne-Marie does with STEMETS and many other great organizations, we have to do that now, because if we don't make those changes within the next few years, in my view, the next 20, 30, 40 years, those biases, that whole very male, white male approach is going to be inherent in everything that we do and touch. And that's what we've got to change right now.
But going back to your point about networks, which is the starting point, this is exactly what I think we're talking about when you say, it is not your fault if you're born white and a male. And I have lots of those in my life who I love. So it has nothing to do with the kind of personal guilt for being one.
Absolutely.
But
Here's one
if
nice one.
you don't use your power to extend it to other people who are not in that network, you're just maintaining the status quo, and you don't want that, otherwise you wouldn't be in a Future Fest audience. So I think it isn't about, whether WOW Women of the World can do the work. Of course we'll do it, but it's actually about people who have the power already
Absolutely.
rethinking whether they want to hold on to it exclusively or whether they are going to be activists in change.
Yes, and I think men have an equal, if not greater, role in trying to make this change. As Ghislaine knows, we try and talk to many male agents of change to say, look, in the workplace, on your board, on your executive team, you have got to be that voice. We have a great Tech London Advocates Women in Tech group led by Sarah Luxford, and Ghislaine's actively involved with that, as am I. We look at failure. If we don't get men to those events to understand, and many of the men that I speak to say, look, I want to do something, but I don't quite know what to do. But we got to fix that, and we got to fix that now, because again, in the next 3 to 5 years, I don't want to be up here on a stage in 5 years saying London Tech, 17% women. We
really don't need that.
failed, and I'm looking at a lot of the men in the room saying, you got to come on this journey with us. Every one of you, just find one that you can mentor, you can advise, you can question your board, question your executive team. There are lots of big companies that are still, 95% of their boards, are men, and we're not going to change if those numbers don't change. And personally, I know this is people debate this. I'm a believer in quotas.
And actually, I'm sitting here with some Slido questions, but in fact, you've both naturally covered several of the ones that came in, particularly around the negative stigma of women in tech, which is a very big problem, and about actually how we look at life and work together. Yes, so. We've finished our time, which is really sad, and I think, but I do want to say to the audience, actually, and we just need to mention that in the debate room today, there's a session at 12:30 called Just the Job, which will directly follow up some of the things that Jude and Russ have been putting on the table.
Okay. Come to WOW Women of the World Festival in March.
Come to the WOW and the World Festival, yes. And also, there's a Machines That Care discussion about the care sector and how we've got to hold the human interface into that technology side later this afternoon in the debate room too. And lots about AI and creativity tomorrow as well. So thank you really a lot. I think we have to get you together again to have a longer debate with Nesta at some point. But thank you, Russ Shaw and Jude Kelly. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.